Okay, good morning. We're almost to the finish line of our September board meeting. We have two big events today. One is clearing the technology position paper. And that is a little bit different than a normal standard, as you said. As you know, we don't go through all the text. We don't have to agree all the text before it goes out, but it's basically a clearance. It doesn't require a supermajority vote either. And then, if you haven't heard, we're going to approve IAASB 5000. And we will celebrate both accomplishments afterwards. But before we do that, we will have a discussion at the board table, see what amendments we need to make from the draft circulated to you yesterday afternoon and posted on our public websites. So Angelo, Fadi, Kevin, the floor is yours.
All right. Good morning, everybody. So we got a few board members and their TAs that visited us this morning, and they provided some incredibly useful edits that I wanted to kind of bring to your attention. So for those of you that are tracking, what you're going to see now in agenda item 4D, which is going to be put on in our material, are the changes from the version that was distributed yesterday. So I'm going to walk you through some of these changes at a really high level. Some of them are really editorial, but okay. So on the first one, and Ado has volunteered to speak to this first one. So I'm going to let Ado speak to this first. Yes. So that looks good. So Ado, you recommended that we change this up. I'm going to pass it to you, and I appreciate that.
Okay, that's one way of doing it. Right. So this is a comment we had in respect of also when we're discussing the gap analysis, which was focused very much on opportunities. And I think we can be a little bit more precise. Also with the board, we had a discussion on this gap analysis need to lead to actions or maybe terminology more correct, potential standard setting activities. And that was the discussion that we had with the projects group, or what, not sure what you're called, but so there was the suggestion of changing opportunities to potential standard setting activities, which we all were aligned on. Yeah.
I'm sorry for putting you on the spot. That was very articulately done.
So it also makes fundamental sense.
It absolutely does. And it's consistent with our framework for activities, the way it's described there. So that's perfect. Thank you very much, Ado. Okay, if we can continue scrolling down, please, Michelle, thank you. And a little bit further, let's go to, yes, and let's stop here. So some board members quite rightly pointed out that not all of these are necessarily principles in the strictest sense of the word. Some of them are more actions than they are principles. Principles is, I will embrace technology. That feels more like a principle than if you go further on and you see we will explore and then introduce requirements. That sounds more like an action. So to quell some concerns around that, we are just going to say to deliver on this commitment, the IAASB will. So that's what that is. Of course, it loses the allure of and 8 guiding principles is a nice caption for a piece in Bloomberg, perhaps, or somewhere else. But in any event, I'm going to pause there and see if there's any reactions to that change.
Since I was key drafter, I agree. They're not really principles. So, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just lend my support to the change. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Everyone's nodding. We could figure out a way in whatever graphic to say is that these are sort of commitments, 8 commitments.
All right, we will, yes, we'll figure something out, but thank you for that. So in that vein, you'll note that there are references to principles elsewhere. So we will do some conforming changes throughout the document to make sure that that's all consistent, but that'll come later on. Okay, if we can go scroll down a little bit more, Michelle, to number 3. I was going to say guiding principle 3. I had to catch myself. Okay, so if we straddle that page, if we straddle the next page and this one, yeah, perfect. This is perfect, actually. Okay, so we got some comments around the way it was originally the way that second sentence read was almost like the IAASB will tell practitioners how to apply a technology-enabled procedure, which is not what was exactly intended. And also the explore and introduce construct was not spilling over into that second sentence. We have now found an elegant way, I think, of addressing all of that. And so now we've got 2 bullets here with the explore and introduce as appropriate to both. The first one has to deal with those situations where an auditor or a practitioner will determine whether technology is needed in their engagement to achieve engagement objectives. And the second part of that is in those circumstances when they do use technology-enabled procedures, whether they're necessary or not to achieve the engagement objectives, there will be requirements, or you will explore the introduction of requirements that deal with the considerations around the application of those procedures. So that's the construct that we use here to address the concern. So I'll pause here and get thoughts on that.
Hernan?
Thank you, Tom. Well, I support the direction of the changes. Shad, in the second bullet, I change addressing to address to be consistent with the rest of the text. Thank you.
Right, you're right. I was gonna know, that was my comment. We need to get these to be parallel constructions.
And you'll forgive, this was 11th hour drafting, so thank you for that. Absolutely, that's a good proposal.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, fine with that change. I think this is capturing what we want to do. Oh, sorry, Sue.
Right, it's that tissue box again. So I haven't had a chance to read these in detail, and unfortunately my eyes just can't quite make it that far. But I think this and also the change you talked about earlier about talking about activities is an improvement here. I was surprised about the removal completely of reference to application material, because I think our experience when we've been looking through the feedback to 500 is that a lot of the things that are arising are things where people are looking for more explanation or what have you in the application material of how the principles apply in a technology environment. So in some ways this reads kind of sharper, but I suspect that you'll probably say that application material is kind of a given with a requirement, but it might just be nice to note in there that might be an important part of the package.
And I'll just jump in really quick. So Sue, I thought a little bit, I think we talked about this 1 minute ago. So I've had a little bit of chance to think about it on my way to this boardroom. I think you're absolutely right. I have no concerns with adding application material right in that lead-in sentence, principles-based requirements and application material, and that applies to both. And I think that might go some way to addressing okay. Does anybody object to that? Wonderful. Anything else on this paragraph, on this guiding principle paragraph?
We're fully committed to it.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Okay, if we can scroll down to number 6, please, Michelle. Thank you. Okay, here there was a comment that was raised. I believe it was raised by Greg. He's saying within the context of what we've been discussing with IAASB, and it might make sense to refer to this as IAASB being our sister standard setting board. So any objections to that change?
We should use gender neutral language, so our partner standard setting board, but yeah, I'm fine with it, but I think we should be gender neutral.
You will all let me know what the proper convention is. Partner
Partner.
sounds good to me. Okay. Wonderful. I think we're going to change that to partner. Oh, Hernan, please.
Did change. I believe that we have to refer its sister standard, no our, because we are talking in third person.
Also, good grammatical pickup there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. If we continue to scroll down to 8, this is a pretty minor change. Financial, and we've been referring to it throughout as financial and other external reporting. So this is just consistent with that. Okay, I don't think there's going to be any objection to that. And if there is, please. Okay, let's continue scrolling down, Michelle, please. Under gap and yeah, let's pause here for a sec. There was a comment raised by Josephine, quite rightfully, that work plan decisions and what we had in terms of current and future standard setting projects is they're sort of the same thing. So I have made some really quick drafting decisions here, Josephine, to kind of, what we're trying to denote here is that the gap analysis and other activities that emerge as a result of this technology position will inform work plan decisions at the high level. So new project, when to do a project, but also specific decisions at the project level. So those are the two levels that we're trying to denote here. I think the change kind of accomplishes that, Josephine, but I will see if you agree with that.
Sorry, Angelo. Unfortunately, for some bizarre reason, my computer will not let me in. So that might be on purpose by my computer. I think what we had before was absolutely fine. It made perfect sense. And then the changes you made then didn't make sense. And now this isn't quite working either. Ultimately, whatever we do is going to inform our work plan decisions. And that does include projects, project teams, etc. And I think we're overcomplicating it by suggesting there's something within that. So I would prefer you just went back to what you originally had. But I'm sorry, I haven't got it in front of me to tell you what the words were.
And I don't think that, so absolutely, Josephine, we can revert it all the way back. And I don't think that's going to create a lot of problems for the rest of the board members. You'll have to take my word for it because I don't have a mechanism for broadcasting that.
It just says the gap analysis will be used to inform the IAASB's work plan decisions. Insights that emerge from the gap analysis will also be used to inform current or future standard setting projects, blah, blah, blah. So I think most people would be content putting that language back in, which was in the original board paper for the week. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And if we continue to scroll down, please. Let's go all the way to other activities. This is perfect. Thank you, Michelle. Right here is perfect. This is just a consistent, to bring it consistent to that change that was proposed by Ado and Jamie earlier on in the document. Again, potential standard setting activities rather than opportunities and other related activities, which is consistent with the way we refer to these things in our strategy and work plan, in our framework for activities, et cetera, et cetera. So nothing controversial there. And if we continue to, oh, sorry, Sue.
It's not that controversial, but you've cleaned that section up and it's good. But one of the things that has got lost in that cleanup is around the transparency of the work that we have. So there was a reference to the web page, and I thought what was also really important was about the maintenance and keeping the latest versions of things on there. I think that's an important part of what we do. So I don't necessarily feel you need all the stuff that was there before, but I think actually for us to have a commitment that we are going to share the material and maintain it is an important part.
So I'll say this, absolutely, Sue. I think we can revert some of this stuff back. I think it's important to kind of remind everybody at this point that we can make changes to some of this. It's not a standard, so every comma and period doesn't need to be, but if you can trust me that I can revert back some of that stuff, I can commit to that. If nobody objects to having a reference that was in the original that may essentially said that we've created a website where we're going to house this stuff, if you're all in agreement, I will revert some of that back, but not necessarily all of it.
Okay, let's, I think people are in principle. I looked at the language. We'll see. I didn't see much that was missing, but we could take a look. When we get to support for a release of this, I'm gonna ask some discretion by me to have me and Billy to look at the final draft and post it, subject to the spirit of agreement of this board. Angela, okay, keep
Yes.
going.
Oh, I'm sorry, was there something else? Okay, it's back to me. And I think those are all of the changes that I wanted to, the bigger changes that I wanted to highlight. So thank you very much.
Okay. Any other comments on the draft that was shared? Before we sort of confirm our support for this document being published and guiding us in the future as it relates to technology, I wanted to turn to Dave, if you have any observations.
Thank you, Tom. I would just say that I think you're getting to a good place here, and we'll see how this all gets implemented. But I appreciate the work of the board on this.
Okay. So again, it's not a due process document by any stretch, but it will guide our actions and our work plan decisions going forward. I'm wanting, by show of hands, who's in favor of this becoming the technology position of the board? Okay. Who is not? So let it be noted that Eric is not. I think, Eric, you had your view on the record the other day, but if you wanted to say anything else, obviously, feel free.
No, I would say nothing has really changed for me since the last version. Thanks.
And if I recall, it was really about the level of guidance and detail that it would instruct us to take action going forward on this, if that was the gist of your comment. Okay, so I want to thank Angelo, Fadi, Kevin. I think Brett was involved in this, and many others who had input. The technology resource group that was advising us throughout this process, the digital advisory group, many others. So congratulations on clearing this technology position. I have to say, we are only at the very beginning. The hard work really begins now. And I will ask Angela, do you have anything you would like to say?
Yeah, I can't improve on that. I just want to express my thank you as well to everybody you mentioned and to the board for all of your comments and support. And thank you.
Okay, one down, one more to go. And I'm gonna turn it over to Josephine.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you ever so much for those of you who popped into the room this morning and helped us. And we've got some gold stars to hand out to Hanan and then someone else who was and Dave, who found some little knits there, which have been there actually for quite a while. And so thank you to that. I'm not going to go through the requirements and the application material line by line because and on the whole, the application material at over 400 plus paragraphs is quite a lot to talk through. So I'm going to be more just open it up and get people's comments, but we will start at least with just focusing first of all on the requirements. We've got about 18 or so changes to the requirements. And then after we've been through the requirements, we will go through the application material and see if there are any comments on there. And that will probably be a speedier way to get through this. So thank you, Tom. Over to you. If we could just get any comments on the requirements, please.
Okay, we're turning to the requirements right now. Any first takers? Okay. Edo.
So, and I know I brought this up on Monday as well in respect of requirement 138. That's what I'm talking about. And at the time we were discussing the proportionality of this requirement to limited assurance engagements. We left the meeting that the staff would look at application material to potentially bring some proportionality in. I think the changes that were proposed by the staff actually amplified my concern, because it suddenly brought limited assurance engagements to do even more in that requirement. And I reflected back on where limited assurance sits and the type of procedures that you do, and that is primarily inquiry analytical procedures. That's how it sits in 2400. There's no commensurate requirement in 3000 nor in 3410. So this would be quite a step up in respect to procedures that anybody may challenge the practitioner on. Why did you not do anything in respect of a material disclosure? So that raised some concerns with me, and so we did discuss this morning with the task force, and it was my view to also to be in line with our assurance framework as we have it now, but also not least by concerns, at least in my territory, but I think they're broader, they're living broader also in Europe, that they're afraid that practitioners are going to boil the ocean over a limited assurance engagement. And in that sense, I suggested to make this requirement an R requirement, because then it still aligns with what we have in 330 from an ISA perspective, and it aligns with what we typically are expected to do in a limited assurance engagement. So that would be my proposition.
Julie, is it on this exact point? Okay, coming on this point, I'd rather dispose this point first, and then we could go to something else.
I don't need to go back over everything Edo said, but I'm in complete agreement with what he just expressed.
Kai?
Exact same thing.
Okay. Josephine?
That's fine. So I just need to make sure that my task force board members are happy with this change. Neil?
Yep, I'm very happy to support the change of 138 moving to a reasonable assurance requirement.
Christelle?
I fully support this change. Thank you.
More important, what?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't want to be in a situation, to Edo's point, where you end up doing more work on limited assurance than you do on reasonable. So it makes perfect sense.
Okay, so let's to be clear for the record, this would be moving the requirement to a reasonable assurance requirement. So 138 would be 138R going forward.
Yes, so that's correct. So we're going to change 138 to 138R, which clearly signals this is a reasonable assurance requirement. And when we get to the application material in the next session, we will point out the changes that will need to be made to the application material paragraphs that hang off now new 138R. Thank you.
Okay, Julie.
So my second item, Tom, was one that I raised earlier in the week, and it's the what I call the reality of the situation, where you could very well have someone within your office or your firm or your network firm be another practitioner. And I appreciate all of the discussions around the definition and the presumption that if you have a group component, you're more than likely be able to be sufficiently appropriately involved. But I do think there'll be scenarios where that's not the case. In particular, when an engagement has already been performed, let's say in that one-to-many circumstance we talk about, or there's probably a few others that I can think of. So appreciate that we're not looking to open up the definition at this point in time, but I do think there needs to be a nod in the application material at least to steer the practitioner to where to go in that circumstance. So which requirements do they apply? Do they apply another practitioner requirements, or do they apply something else? And so I know we're not doing application material right now, Josephine, but I had requested the task force to think about that.
Yes, and just to confirm, we agree with that. We think that's a good idea, and we have identified an application material paragraph where we will make a change. So when we talk about the application material paragraphs, I'll relay to the rest of the board what that change will be. I just want to make sure again for the record that the task force board members are comfortable with us making an amendment to the application material paragraph to recognise that situation.
Neil?
Yep, I support that.
Okay, nods are acknowledged. Let's deal with Ada.
And also other board members.
Yep, well, that's what, we're going to the application material paragraphs where this will be dealt with, I assume, right? Okay, I think, anyone else on the requirements?
Okay, so we're going to move on to the application material paragraphs now. We don't have any other comments on the requirements. Thank you very much. So, how sorry. Okay, so Dan's just going to talk through some minor editorials that we had that were pointed out. The gold star of Hernan and Dave raised, and so they're on the public record.
No, okay, thank you. And thanks to Hernan for spotting this. It's paragraph 187. 187D 4 and 5. And basically it's the same change. In D4B little 2, it's essentially a typo. It reads now to be at least a demanding. It needs to be at least as demanding. And that same change in 5B little 2, just to get those on the public record.
Okay, there's no harm on getting editorials on the public record, but we do, I thought, approve the standard subject to editorial changes and typos being fixed as well. So, but I'm fine. I think everyone's nodding. It's a good idea to get the mistakes cleared up. Okay, should we go to the application material?
Thank you so much. So before we open for comments on the application material, I will go through the changes that we're proposing in respect of the changes we made to the requirements and in respect of Julie's conversation with us earlier. So the first change then to recognise the circumstances Julie's already discussed is in A105. In that first sentence of A105, I'm going to read it as it is now. It says, in certain circumstances, the practitioner may become aware that a separate engagement on sustainability information for a group component has been performed by a firm other than the practitioner's firm. And that's just not allowing for that flexibility that we've just been discussing. So what we're going to do is we're going to strike out those last words, other than the practitioner's firm, and we're going to include some new wording that allows for the situation that we've been describing. So it would be including another office of the practitioner's firm or a network firm. So the change will be, in certain circumstances, the practitioner may become aware that a separate engagement on sustainability information for a group component has been performed by a firm, open bracket, including another office of the practitioner's firm or a network firm, close bracket, strike out other than the practitioner's firm, and then we have a full stop. And I'm going to read it one more time. as if it were completely changed. In certain circumstances, the practitioner may become aware that a separate engagement on sustainability information for a group component has been performed by a firm, open bracket, including another office of the practitioner's firm or a network firm, close bracket. To make it consistent, that change with the rest of the paragraph, if you look to the next few sentences, 1, 2, and the third sentence that follows where it says, in these circumstances, the other firm, and to quote Ado, yadi-da-di-da, what we need to do is we need to strike out some wording there. So it's consistent with what we have above. So it's going to read, in these circumstances, the requirements in paragraph 50 to 55 would apply. I'll read it one more time. We're striking out the words in the middle there. So it says, in these circumstances, the requirements in paragraphs 50 to 55 would apply. So just making sure that everybody's happy with that change.
And Josephine, I think we also just need to point out, remember this together with the previous paragraph 104 and 105 was the paragraphs we introduced to specifically address the concern that was raised by IAASB Committee 1. And I think with this addition, I think this is the right place to address it, because I think it will then still be captured by the guardrails that we've put around it, that yes, this may come up, but once you know about it, you would expect in subsequent years you could plan for that. So I think we're still consistent with that general direction.
Ada?
Thank you. And I agree with the change made. I'm just wondering whether that change should also be made to 103 when we speak of the when we speak of a firm other than the practitioner's firm. So you would apply the same change to 103 as well to be complete. Thank you.
Wendy?
I just wanted to express strong support for that change.
Josephine or someone from the team?
Yeah, that was trying to explain to me, but then.
No, I think just from staff's perspective, and I would say that I don't think that the same change would be made to A103. That is talking more generally about essentially what's in paragraph 43, that it's either work performed by a component practitioner or by another practitioner. A105, as Willie said, is really the place where we're talking about the exception to the rule, where you become aware of something done by another firm. To me, that it seems to be the most appropriate place to do it.
Thank you. So no change. Thank you. Okay, so then obviously we've got the other change that I just want to go through, which is in relation to the requirement and changing the requirement from an all-round to a reasonable assurance requirement. So we're looking at paragraph A436 and A436A. And Dan's going to talk us through the changes, because this morning when we discussed this in the room, we made the changes to 436A, but Dan's actually spotted that 436 also needs to change for the limited assurance being removed from the requirement. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Josephine. And in A436, which will now be A436R, there is a reference to limited assurance there that needs to be removed. So this would be the second sentence that starts with however. The words an acceptable level for the engagement brackets for limited assurance or would need to be struck. And then the brackets at the end of that sentence for reasonable assurance would also need to be removed. So if I read the sentence as it would be revised, it would be, however, the practitioner may determine that the risks of material misstatement for those disclosures are at an acceptably low level, full stop.
Shall I do? Thank you, Dan. So then we have also A436A. So that's now going to an R. So it's a reasonable assurance paragraph. The changes here will be made to remove reference to limited assurance. So A436A will now read, the consideration of the need to design and perform substantive procedures for these disclosures reflects the practitioner's assessment, reflects that, first bullet, the practitioner's assessment of the risk of material misstatement is judgmental, full stop. And then the whole remaining part of that paragraph will be struck. And then the second bullet, that there are inherent limitations on internal control, including the possibility of management override. Therefore, for example, the practitioner may determine that testing the operating effectiveness of controls may need to be supplemented with limited tests of detail.
People are nodding. Anyone object? No objections.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. So now we're going to just open it up for any other comments that the board members may have on the application material paragraphs. And we won't deal with just little edits and nits this time. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else who wants to speak before we go to voted? Dave Sachiko.
Sorry, I just want to check that, Josephine, we talked about some changing in the appendix 2, which will be considered by the task force because it will be edited, right? Okay, great, thank you.
We had noticed in the illustrations, you know, where the bullet points are and they explain the fact pattern following, and then you have the assurance report that follows. There's some inconsistency in our reference to comparatives in there, so we will make sure that it's consistent throughout. Thank you, Sachiko.
And also appendix 2 as well. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So noted. Okay. We're gonna go to vote shortly. Before we get to that point, I wanted to ask Dave if he has any final observation before we turn to the voting process.
Tom, I don't have any public interest issues to raise at this point.
Thank you, Dave. The next thing is I'm going to turn to Josephine as the task force chair to address relevant due process considerations from the task force's perspective.
Thank you so much. So the Sustainability Assurance Task Force's due process considerations in coordination with the program and technical director have, of course, been included in Part D of Agenda Item 2, which was posted publicly on the IAASB's meetings webpage on August the 30th, 2024. And apparently now you can get into the website if you want to have another look. In the task force's view, the significant matters that the task force had identified through its deliberations since it started work on developing ISSA 5000 have been reflected in the agenda materials presented to the IAASB at its meetings. In the task force view, there are no significant matters discussed by the task force in developing 5000 that have not been brought to the IAASB's attention. The task force does not believe that further consultation on the standard is warranted. For example, field testing of the proposals or holding a public forum or a roundtable, given the input from stakeholders through the public consultation on ED 5000 and outreach throughout the development of 5000, which included a comprehensive global outreach campaign that included roundtables and other events undertaken during the consultation period of ED 5000. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Josephine. Now I'm going to call on Willie, as in his role as technical director, to report on due process.
Thank you, Tom. I refer board members and official observers to agenda item 10 that sets out, as stated in its objective, the status of due process followed in relation to this project under the headings that address background and due process up to the date of the September 2024 IAASB meeting. Based on that and the proceedings during this week, I advise that due process has been followed effectively and with proper regard for the public interest in relation to the development of ISSA 5000 up to as well as during the September 2024 IAASB meeting. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, So we're getting to the big moment. Does anyone have an objection on voting on the approval of ISSA 5,000? Or are you unclear what we're voting on? And to be clear, it's the requirements in the application material, the paragraphs that we just went through. Okay. So it is time for the big moment. We're gonna vote on the approval of 5,000. Remember, 12 votes are needed. And for fun, I'm gonna start with the votes in support. Who supports the approval of ISSA 5,000? Let the record show that all 18 board members voted for its approval. That means I don't have to go through the abstentions and dissents. So that's great. Now I'm going to turn to Josephine on your view on re-exposure.
Thank you, Tom. So agenda item 2, part D, presents the task force analysis of whether the 5,000 needs to be re-exposed. Agenda item 2F provides a summary of the major changes made in the introductory paragraphs, the definitions and requirements between 5,000 and the final proposed 5,000 as presented in agenda item 2B1, with the further changes, of course, that were discussed during this meeting. In the task force's view, there is no need to re-expose the standard. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to vote on whether we feel re-exposure is necessary. It would require 12 votes of the board to require re-exposure. Does anyone on this board feel as if we need to re-expose the standard? Let the record show no one has voted for re-exposure. Therefore, we will go to approval. Okay. Veli, one last thing. I wanted to ask you about the effective date.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. And the board will remember we discussed this on Monday. So this is really just to confirm that the standard will be effective for December 15, 2026, both in relation to sustainability information reported for periods beginning on or after, as well as for sustainability information reported as at a specific date. We did note on Monday as well that we will issue further guidance on that, both in terms of the basis for conclusions and in Q&As. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on that? Super. So I think we need to give everyone around the board table and everyone involved with this activity a round of applause. What an accomplishment. So I'm going to just say a few words on this. We'll have some time to celebrate later. But I really do feel this is a milestone accomplishment of this board because there's so much involved with what just happened. This effectively, even though we built off existing standards and practice in many way or guidance in many way, we created something relatively new and a new suite, the beginning of potentially a new suite of standards and a new way of working. It showed that when we really needed to, and when the world demanded something from a public interest perspective, that we could act. We could act quickly, stand things up, and be flexible in our approach to do it. Not only that, people used to say that it took standard setters too long to deliver something, but we've delivered this even earlier than was initially expected. And now, as a consequence of this, we have a high quality standard ready for the marketplace to adopt. And initial indications are that the market is going to adopt this standard as the global baseline. Now, we have a bit of work still to do, but sometimes it's worth stepping back and recognizing this accomplishment and thanking everyone involved because all of you had a part in it. But I do want to especially recognize the staff team that was involved in this: Claire, Dan, Fadi, TK, Kazuka, and Adriana, who was a staff fellow with us at the beginning. I particularly wanted to thank our drafted team, which was another sign of taking advantage of great talent, Susan, Joanna, and Jamie. In this, I wanted to thank all the board members for their time. Billy, I would have to say that you've dedicated a huge amount of energy to this effort. I know board members, whether directly involved with the project, have traveled the world for outreach, to promote. I don't think we've touched more people in any other project than this one in a very short period of time. And finally, I wanted to note, obviously, the people who are part of this project throughout, like Lynn, Isabel, Natalie, who without them, we don't get up and running and getting this project to this completion stage. But last but not least, Josephine, hugely appreciate your leadership in this regard. I couldn't have thought of a better person to run the task force. More importantly, when I came up with crazy ideas, she first told me I was crazy. And then 5 minutes later, she's like, okay, we'll get down and we'll get it done. And that was literally what happened when I suggested we move the project forward 6 months. But throughout the project, and I think you've done a wonderful job shepherding us to this great position. So again, a reflection, really proud of this accomplishment. We're not done with sustainability. We'll support the standard. We want to ensure adoption globally. We have a number of activities to support the adoption, but take a moment to reflect that you were part of something relatively historic here. Thank you. Josephine specifically asked me not to call upon her right now, but I'll call upon Dave. Any reflections about the totality of the project from the PIOB perspective?
Well, Tom, first of all, let me just congratulate the board for what you've just done, which, as you said, is historic, and it will be very important for a lot of reasons, much bigger than just auditing or providing assurance on sustainability matters, but protecting the earth. So this is the value that you've provided here, I think is incredible. Your ability to do it in the time frame that you did it in is well, it sets the bar at a level that maybe you don't want it to be at, Tom. But I think this is one where the board understood the public interest and embraced that and ran with it. So I just want to congratulate you, and I know there's still a lot of work to do to implement this, but this is an incredibly important milestone. So congratulations.
Thank you, Dave. One other group I should want to thank in this process too is we had an important session with IAASB on Wednesday, and a lot of work has gone with them that has made this moment possible because we were always committed to an integrated package. So many thanks to the IAASB team for allowing us to get to this approval vote today. I'll pause here. Anyone want to add anything? Oh, and Josephine, you're so right. I see Megan way over there, Megan Hartman, who's been so instrumental in helping us with the outreach efforts, which have been important to get into a good conclusion that could be supported throughout the world. So thank you, Megan. And thank you, Josephine, for reminding me. So we're getting to the final moments of this public session. I know the minute you leave the room, you're saying to yourselves, when am I coming back? but when will the draft minutes be available? And what turns out, they'll be available in due course and posted for approval in December. But you can watch, in the meantime, you could watch proceedings over YouTube recordings. So in terms of the call that's scheduled for October 23rd, Billy, you have any sense of whether we're going to need it?
No, Tom, we're going to release that date.
So no mid-quarter call. That means that our next IAASB meeting will be held here on December 9th to 12th. It's a 4-day meeting. Details of the meeting and the agenda have yet to be finalized. We'll be informing you shortly on the agenda. And in terms of when will posting begin, it will begin on November 18th. And we promise to have everything up, or nearly everything up, by November 22nd. It's been a long week. I think we addressed any and every part of our work plan this week. So it may have felt a little exhausted from times, but I think we leave with a sense of satisfaction. I really wanted to thank everyone that's been involved in the preparation of this session, and the teams, the support teams, everyone for making the successful and smooth handling of this meeting possible. I want to, Dave, thank you for your time and your comments throughout. And thank you to all the observers on YouTube. So with that, unless anyone objects, I'm going to close the public session of this meeting. Okay. Meeting adjourned. Okay, we're gonna have an executive session. We have a little surprise or toast for the executive session. And let's reconvene in 15 minutes, 11:15. I don't think we're gonna require all the time for the executive session, but we wanted to get a little bit of bubbly to toast the success.